Built for speed. Built for firepower. Built for a war that never came.
The Americans may be claiming Phase 1 of Operation Enduring Freedom has been successfully completed.
We feel like we've pretty much achieved air supremacy over Afghanistan.
Its starring role in 1986's Top Gun brought it fame, but its legacy as the world's deadliest dogfighter was earned over the skies in the Middle East.
Both the Taliban and bin Laden's Al-Qaeda terror network have reacted with defiance.
Meet the F-14 Tomcat. The F-14 story begins with a hard-won lesson. Aircraft carriers and their flight decks of fighters. One Pacific.
On a single carrier, take off from the flight deck to scout enemy vessels over an area of thousands of square miles.
But the rise of the Soviet Union meant the U.S. needed a new fighter if the Cold War ever turned hot. The Navy first looked for this new fighter in the Tactical Fighter Experimental Program, but the F-111 was too slow and too heavy for the short takeoff and landings needed aboard a carrier. Vice Admiral Thomas Tomcat Connolly was so adamant that the Navy needed its own plane that he said during a government hearing that there wasn't enough thrust in Christendom to fix the F-111. He would go on to become the F-14's biggest advocate, and eventually its namesake. This new F-14 included a variable geometry wing design. During takeoff and low-speed flight, its wings would shift forward at the tips, expanding overall surface area and providing greater lift. At supersonic speeds, wings would tuck backwards for a higher top speed. With an upper limit of Mach 2.34, powered by its two General Electric F-110 GE400 afterburning turbofan engines, the Tomcat could still outpace today's F-22 or F-35. But there was more to the Tomcat than just speed.
I feel the need for speed.
Using the first microprocessor ever found on a fighter jet, the F-14's AWG-9 X-band pulse Doppler radar could track as many as 24 enemy aircraft from 195 miles away. In fact, the F-14's radar was so powerful, it could even track cruise missiles. The F-14 Tomcat would see the most combat in the Middle East, where it played a role in various conflicts for nearly 3 decades. The F-14 came with 10 hardpoints, which gave the jet fighter plenty of options for weapons. But the most deadly was the AIM-54 Phoenix missile. The Tomcat would remain the missile's only operational platform for the United States and Iran after the U.S. sold the fighter to the Shah in 1976. Yes, that would become a big problem.
President Bush says this current build-up in the Gulf is to make sure that Saddam Hussein has heard the message. Well, this is the message, and it is not just a psychological one.
Thanks to Top Gun in 1986, the Tomcat was a fighter jet with a dedicated fan base. 5 years later, it seemed nearly obsolete. With the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991, the F-14 lost its role as a would-be Soviet interceptor. The Navy tried to turn the Tomcat into a capable reconnaissance aircraft, but the plane's upkeep was pricey compared to the Hornet and the Super Hornet. And after the Iranian Revolution in 1979, the F-14 became an enemy aircraft.
The Iranian Air Force is an American preserve. And behind these pilots is a backup force of thousands of American advisors and technicians.
Fearing any spare Tomcat parts falling into the wrong hands, the U.S. scrapped planes without mercy once they entered retirement. With the last F-14 leaving service in 2006, today it's hard to find any Tomcat airframes outside of Iran. But that wouldn't be the end of the F-14 story. And we're not talking about Top Gun and Maverick. With the rise of a powerful China, many of the Tomcat's characteristics will likely be found in the upcoming Penetrating Counter-Air Fighter, built to maintain air superiority over vast stretches of ocean. Because if war breaks out on the open sea, it helps to have a fighter jet that can easily outpace the competition.